All right, time's up. Which Syracuse basketball players entered the transfer portal?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we're going to talk about the 7 Syracuse basketball players that put their name into the transfer portal. Now, for some context, on March 18th, the transfer portal opened, and today was the final day, May 1st, where players can submit their names into the portal. Now, I just want to be clear, just for clarification purposes, players do not have to commit by May 1st or today, if you're watching today, but they had to put their names in. Okay, we understand that. They have basically until fall classes to pick a team, but they had to put their name in by now. They had 45 days to make their decision. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So Syracuse had 7 players put their name into the transfer portal. We're going to talk about the guys that are already out the door. Some of them are still in the portal. And then we're going to rank them. Which ones were, the toughest losses for the Orange, whereas some of them were, all right, not the end of the world that they left. Let's start with the players that have already transferred. And why not talk about Maliq Brown, who is on his way to Duke. He was part of the Syracuse class of 2022, that freshman 6. He is a forward. He averaged 10 points and 7 rebounds last year on 70% shooting from the floor. And he started 18 of 32 games for the Orange, which might not sound like a lot to you because you honestly might have thought, without looking at the numbers, that he played or he started more. But he didn't become a full-time starter on this team until Naheem McLeod went down with a foot injury, and that's when Maliq Brown was asked to be a center, which is not his position, but he did a pretty solid job considering the circumstances. He was ACC first-team all-defense and had the most steals by any center, if you will, in the history of the conference. And the reason why I put air quotes around center is because he's not really a center, but still tremendous accomplishment having that many steals when playing more than half the year out of position. Now, it is certainly a tough loss for Syracuse, and it's, spoiler alert, the toughest one for the Orange, but it's a good thing that they've done a good job replacing him. Adrian Autry, obviously, getting Jair Davis from Delaware. Davis has certain strengths and weaknesses. He can create his own shot, but not quite the defender that Maliq Brown is. Maliq Brown is the opposite. Great defender, not necessarily someone who can create his own shot. And also Donnie Freeman, who projects to be the starting power forward next season for Syracuse, number 6 in the ESPN 100 list. Obviously, super high expectations for Donnie Freeman. Perhaps the loss won't sting too much, but Maliq Brown going to Duke next season, not an easy loss for Syracuse right there. Next up, Benny Williams. He committed to the University of Central Florida, otherwise known as UCF. He was part of the Syracuse class of 2021. He was the lone freshman in that class where he was a high-end 4-star recruit. And he first kind of flashed because he didn't really do a whole lot in his freshman year, but he first kind of popped a little in that blowout loss to Duke. Remember that game in February of 2022 when Duke went up 18-2 or something like that in the first few minutes of the game and just ran away with it? Well, that was Benny Williams' best game as a freshman, and he had a few moments here or there over the next couple of seasons after, but he just never could quite live up to his recruiting ranking. He's a solid rotational piece. Now, he was suspended at the beginning of last season for what was said to be a violation of team rules. I don't know what the violation exactly was, but there was a violation, and he was suspended, I believe, 2 games for that, 2 regular season games. And then he was also kicked off the team, not very good, following the Wake Forest game. He had a meltdown during that game, kind of shoulder checked Adrian Autry. It didn't quite work out, so hopefully maybe he gets a fresh start at UCF where he can turn around his college career. Next up, Justin Taylor, who is committed to James Madison. He is part of the Syracuse 6 of 2022. I guess I'm just going to start calling it the Syracuse 6, the 6 freshmen that entered in that season. Last year, he averaged 5 points and 4 rebounds on just 35% shooting, 30% from 3. Just could find his stride this year. He started hot. He scored 27 points in his first couple of games last year against New Hampshire and Canisius. But then after that, didn't have much going well for him. Just couldn't really find his shot. And it was really a disappointment. I mean, this was someone who I remember being in the Dome for when he dropped 25 points against Bryant in that loss. It was an embarrassing loss, but they did not lose because of Justin Taylor. And I remember thinking to myself, this guy's going to be one of the premier shooters in the ACC. You look at the numbers, he was darn near 40% in his freshman year. Just couldn't quite put it together last season. He gets a fresh start, obviously, at James Madison. So Justin Taylor, he's at James Madison now. And the final Syracuse player in the transfer portal that has already committed is Peter Carey, who transferred to Siena following Jerry McNamara there. He was also a part of the Syracuse class of 2022. He is a center, and he appeared in 17 total games over the past 2 seasons. He averaged less than a point and a rebound per game. Probably would have been the number 3 center heading into next season. He's going to Siena. Maybe he can develop there. I've said it a number of times. Maybe he can develop and transfer back into the Power 5. I'm not saying he will. I'm not saying he will develop. I'm just saying, you go to Siena from a Power 5 school, you pop there, you do really well, and then maybe you can get yourself back into the Power 5. So in total, of the 7 players that Syracuse basketball lost in the transfer portal, 4 of them have already committed. We just talked about the 4: Maliq Brown, Benny Williams, Justin Taylor, and Peter Carey, all finding different schools for next season. Now, coming up, there are 3 players for Syracuse that are still in the transfer portal, but have not committed to a school. Is it possible they return? All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there is just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton, including their own unique minigames like digging for treasure or a robot panico machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on the Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and today was the final day for all Division I NCAA basketball players to put their names into the transfer portal, and in total, Syracuse had 7 players do just that. 7 players. We talked about the 4 that have already found new homes. I'll repeat them. Maliq Brown going to Duke, Benny Williams to UCF, Justin Taylor to James Madison, and Peter Carey to Siena. There are now 3 remaining players for Syracuse that are in the portal that have not found new homes. Now, again, just to be clear, they don't have to find a new home within the next couple of hours. All right? At the time of this recording, they don't have to find a new home, but they are in the portal. You just have to submit by today. So the 3 players currently in the transfer portal, let's start with Quadir Copeland, Syracuse class of 2022, combo guard connected to, as of early April, haven't found a new report regarding Quadir Copeland, but the schools that Copeland has been connected to are Kansas, Kansas State, McNeese State, Memphis, Mississippi State, NC State, and that is according to 24/7 Sports. That was back, I believe, on April 7th, and I haven't found anything since that would change that. Those are the schools that Quadir Copeland is connected to. He was the runner-up for the 6th Man of the Year this past year. I thought he should have won it, and he only started 1 game, and that was because Judah Mintz was disciplined by the team for the first, I think, 8 minutes of the Boston College game. I believe it timed out to 8. Yeah, timed out to 8. And, yeah, Quadir Copeland got the start instead of Judah Mintz. That's the only reason why he started, because Judah Mintz was team discipline. But anyways, Copeland last year averaged 10 points and 5 rebounds per game on 48% shooting. So obviously he's highly efficient, but just 25% from the 3-point line. He is an acrobatic player and someone who I think Syracuse is going to miss this next season. But at the same time, wasn't the greatest decision maker in the world. 2 turnovers a game is not very good, especially for someone who's playing just above 20 minutes a night. And his assist to turnover ratio was just a shade over 1-to-1. Not very good. Now, I don't think a return to Syracuse is very likely for Quadir Copeland. And the reasoning is because, yeah, he's still in the portal and Syracuse does have the open scholarship spots to bring him back. The issue is, aside from maybe playing time, is that apparently, from what I've heard, it was mutual. Both Copeland and the team wanted a fresh start. So I don't see him all of a sudden welcoming each other back. I don't see it happening. The next up is Mounir Hima, class of 2022, but he was a Duquesne transfer, not a freshman. He is a center. It is unknown what schools are interested in him. And last year, in 40 career games at Syracuse, he averaged less than a point per game. His one highlight was a 7-block night against St. John's just a couple years ago. Now, I have spoken about here on the podcast these last few episodes that the Orange could use a 3rd center. They could, and they do have 3 open scholarship spots available, so perhaps Mounir Hima would be welcome back to Syracuse. This is complete speculation. I got no sourcing on this, but it's just a thought. You need a 3rd center. He's in the portal because the next guy that I'm about to talk about is also in the transfer portal. So who knows? Syracuse could probably use a 3rd center. Maybe Mounir Hima does come back. And finally, we have William Patterson, class of 2023. He was the lone freshman for Syracuse that year. Unknown what schools are interested. He did not dress this past year in any regular season game. Therefore, he took a redshirt season. For those that do not know what redshirt means, it means he gets a year off. He doesn't really play, but he doesn't lose an extra year of eligibility. That's what it means. So now William Patterson can be in school for 5 seasons instead of 4 because he sat this year out. That's what redshirting means for those that do not know. I have been asked that in the past, so just wanted to clarify it. So in total, there are 3 players from Syracuse that are still in the transfer portal. Quadir Copeland, who has heard from Kansas State, McNeese State, Memphis, Mississippi State, and NC State, according to 24/7 Sports. Then there's Mounir Hima and William Patterson. So a pair of a couple centers, perhaps maybe one of them comes back to be the third center. My guess is more likely Mounir Hima, considering that Patterson transferred after Hima entered the portal as well. So that's just my guess on that. Total speculation, but Syracuse does need another center. It doesn't have to be the greatest player in the world. Just need a third body there. So now coming up, it's time to rank which losses are going to hurt the most for Syracuse. I was once trying to buy a last-minute ticket for a New York Mets game last year, and it was frustrating. I couldn't see the view from my seat, and the deals weren't that good at all. That's why I now use Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. One game that I'm thinking about attending is Mets-Marlins down in Miami on May 19th, and I can get in for as little as $5. I just went to the Gametime app, searched up Mets tickets, and the deal popped up right away. You can do the same with any team of your choosing, including the Syracuse Mets. That's right, it was so easy to find. Syracuse is at home on May 14th, and you can get in for as little as $5. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and today we're talking about the 7 Syracuse basketball players that put their names into the transfer portal. Now, 4 of them have already found new homes, and we talked about them. It was Maliq Brown going to Duke, Benny Williams to UCF, Justin Taylor to James Madison, and Peter Carey to Siena. Quadir Copeland has not found a home yet. He's connected to a few schools. Mounir Hima and William Patterson are also in the transfer portal, but it is unknown what schools are interested in those 2 centers. Now it's time to rank the 7 losses that Syracuse had in the transfer portal. Judah Mintz is obviously the biggest loss for Syracuse, but he went to the NBA draft, not in the transfer portal. Let's start with Maliq Brown. Obviously, he is the biggest loss. The biggest loss for Syracuse in the transfer portal is Maliq Brown, and I don't think it's particularly close. They're going to miss his defense. They're going to miss his toughness. Not so much the scoring. I believe Syracuse so far has done a great job with that and getting guys who can put the ball in the hole. But it's going to be a tough loss. It's not easy to replace a guy who was first team all ACC defense this past year, averaged 10 points and 7 rebounds. Not easy it's a tough loss. It's a tough loss for Syracuse in that regard. At the same time, I do think, as I said earlier, the Orange have done a very solid job of replacing him, and they got 2 guys to do it. Obviously, Donnie Freeman, that's a good one. High expectations for him. I've said it a number of times. And Jair Davis, right? Jair Davis and Donnie Freeman versus Maliq Brown. All right. Fine by me. But Maliq Brown is certainly the biggest loss for Syracuse basketball so far in the transfer portal. Quadir Copeland comes in at number 2 for me. And yeah, Copeland had his faults, but also he was fun and exciting. So from an entertainment value, it kind of sucks that he put his name into the transfer portal. He hasn't found a home yet, but I don't think it's likely he comes back. Runner-up for the sixth man of the year, should have won the award because he actually was a sixth man. So I think he's number 2 in terms of the 7 players that Syracuse basketball has lost this offseason. Coming in at number 3 is Benny Williams. And the reasoning is because while he had his ups and downs for Syracuse, you did see that ceiling with him. Like, he did flash a number of times more than any other player that is below him on the list. And also, he had really good length. He had the length to be able to be an ACC player. He just couldn't shoot. He couldn't shoot. His shot is broken. Now, maybe he can fix it at UCF, but that was his big fault, and that's not even going into the personality stuff and everything and getting kicked off the team and everything like that. But from a pure basketball standpoint, Benny Williams is the 3rd biggest loss for Syracuse basketball in the transfer portal. Coming in at number 4 is Justin Taylor. Taylor comes in at number 4 because he sort of falls in line with Benny Williams in terms of, he had potential, but Williams just flashed a little bit more. Whereas with Taylor, you thought he was going to be this big-time three-point shooter. It looked like he was going to be that way after his freshman year. And then this past year, he just struggled. Couldn't find a shot this past year. I still think maybe it's possible he finds his shot at James Madison. And obviously that would make him a very impactful player if he were to transfer back into the Power 5. But he's got to find his shot again. It's as simple as that. It's number 4 on the list. Number 5, and this one might surprise some people. This is where there's a little bit of deviation. William Patterson. The reason why I say William Patterson is because, yeah, he was a low-end 3-star recruit out of high school this past year, and he did redshirt. We've never really seen him play. I believe he dressed in 1 exhibition game. But with William Patterson, there was this unknown factor with him heading into this year, and he's a 7'2" center. And I would have liked to see what he could have done for Syracuse. I'm not saying he should have played last year, but heading into this year, I was all set and ready to have him as the 3rd center on the roster. He was going to be the 3rd center. But, especially with Carey leaving, he's in the portal, so whatever school gets him, he'll be able to maybe hit his potential there. Not saying he will, but there's that untapped upside that Syracuse is missing out on with a guy like William Patterson. That being said, he didn't contribute anything on the court this past year, so it's not the end of the world. Number 6 on the list and number 7 on the list in order are Peter Carey and Mounir Hima. And the reason why I give Carey the tiebreaker over Hima is because Carey has that extra year of eligibility compared to Hima. I believe both can come back to Syracuse and be the 3rd center. But the difference is with a guy like William Patterson is neither guy at this point has untapped potential, in my opinion. I think we have seen the upside of Mounir Hima. We have seen the upside of Peter Carey. They are what they are. They are depth. They are back-end rotation players. They are 3rd-string centers, if that. That's what those guys are. Peter Carey gets the nod over Mounir Hima just because he's got that extra year of eligibility. That was the tiebreaker there. So, ranking the 7 losses in order, Maliq Brown, that's a tough one. Quadir Copeland stings a little. Benny Williams, all right. Justin Taylor, all right. William Patterson, wish I could have seen his upside. And Peter Carey and Mounir Hima, hey, they could be 3rd centers if they want to come back to Syracuse. It's possible. You can come back to your school after entering the portal. I believe the number 1 player in the portal, by the way, Maxime Renault from Stanford, he's back at Stanford. He withdrew his name from the portal. You can do that. But anyways, that is it for today's episode. Now, coming up for tomorrow's episode, we'll have Locked On recruiting analyst, football recruiting analyst, I should say, Brian Smith on the show to talk a little bit of Syracuse football and their recent success in recruiting class of 2024. We'll hit on a little bit who are the impactful players we can expect for next season. Talk about the class of 2025, which I believe at the time of this recording is number 8 overall in the country. And the class of 2026. If you thought number 8 was really high, well, Syracuse football class of 2026 has the number 3 overall rank in the country. Fran Brown is a magician. That's all I'll say. So Brian Smith will be on the podcast to break it all down. Syracuse football recruiting, which is really at a 2-decade high for this team. So that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications so you know right away when I'm dropping the next podcast. Again, players had to enter the transfer portal by pretty much now, but they don't have to commit. So stay tuned for any players, any basketball players that commit to Syracuse. I'll cover it all for you.